Hi guys. Well, the plot thickens. We're reaching the delicate parts of our writing. And no, you cannot start writing yet. Now it's time to deal with episodes. Episodes are very important because they are sequences of your story. What happens when? The reason I ask you to draw structure for your stories will be apparent now. And also I took liberty to draw each of your storylines. So you will have some sort of start, you have some sort of storyline, you have a moment of change, some sort of peak of drama, and then endings. And if we see, you guys have quite different story structures. Like Raul's structure is very interesting: start and then two stories, which can be played in alternate sequence. So you can play storyline A first, and then storyline B, or storyline B and then storyline A. It leads to a peak of drama, and then slowly the story moves towards one of the two endings. In Ricardo's game, there's a player cannot lose. The story is completely linear, and the story is told through sequence of episodes, each ending with a boss battle until the final boss battle. And Miomir decided for a bit more complex structure. So there is a start, there is a point of no return, and there are three different stories. Branch story A, branch story B, branch story C, and each of them have different endings. So there are endings A1 and A2, B1, B2, B3, and C. So before we start dealing with how to make choices and what values we want for these branches, let's do with the episodes. Let's make outline of episodes. So if you see the structure, there's always some sort of start, there's always some sort of things going on between the next moment, which is like the drama, and then from this drama there's again some storylines that lead towards endings. So basically, this start means introduction and exposition. Introduction and exposition are similar, quite similar. The key difference is that introduction is basic introduction of the player in the game, and exposition is sort of extended introduction. So basically, let's imagine we're telling a story of what happened to three piglets. To someone at the party, like, oh, did you know that Wolf burned horribly and the piglets outsmarted him? So this is like typical advice you will get for writing interesting stories. Like, don't start at the beginning. So let's not start with like, oh, once upon a time there was a mama piglet, and then she gave birth to three piglets, and then they lived happily until the moment that they didn't any longer. So this slow introduction from the very beginning is an old kind of approach. So everyone will advise you like, yeah, go for the jugular, start from the action. Yes, that's true, but this sort of action that you start with is not informative. It will not help player. Player will not know what the hell is going on. So you use this introduction part to sort of prologue your story and to give hint what's going to happen. Star Wars, we first see the big powerful ship flying in, and we see a little ship trying to run away. Then there are lightning bolts, shooting, and then there's a battle, the desperate guys trying to defend, blah blah blah. All of this is not relevant for our knowledge of how to follow the story. So we have no clue who's Darth Vader, who's Leia, who are the rebels, what's going on. But we see some interesting, shooting action, and we slowly, very slowly start to realize, this is going to be some battle between good and evil, and some bad guy, and he's obviously a bad guy because he chokes people to death, will be present in the story. So there's some, little girl resisting. So these elements are slowly being introduced. So, for example, if our story starts with action, like, oh, did you know that Wolf died and the pigs burned him? That's the hook of the story, and that's important to have. But also important to know, don't place any important elements that are impossible to understand the story without, because in this moment we have to grab the player's attention but not overburden them with information. After we have this powerful introduction, like, oh, did you know that wolf died, burned horribly, we can start slowly introducing elements. What elements? All the elements that are necessary to understand the story. Like, okay, it happened a long time ago in a nearby forest, or long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So it's like setting the when and where these things happen. The next thing is like, oh, there were 3 little pigs and they decided to build houses, and the first pig was kind of lazy, second pig was kind of stupid, and third pig was engineer. Doesn't matter if you introduce us first to the characters and then to the when and where, but you have to respect all this information and give them in short, understandable manner, because your reader has attention span of cocaine, a squirrel of cocaine on cocaine, so he doesn't know what's going on yet. So you have to be very gentle. And then we can say, yeah, and you know, their neighbor was a big bad wolf, and we also add all the crucial information that's important for the story. For example, usually wolves don't blow houses down, and for this story it's important. So we'll say, yeah, this big bad wolf, he also, you know, blows and huffs and puffs and destroys houses. So that's something we know about him. And that's like the introduction to the story. And next comes the exposition, which sort of builds upon the introduction. And it can be very long. Basically, in the character-based stories, a common route is what exposition usually is about. So yeah, we can say, yeah, first piggy was lazy, didn't want to bother. Second piggy was stupid, didn't know how to build a house. And the third piggy did this. And then there's some event going on, like a piggy warned their brothers, said, oh, you know, don't do this, don't do that, come live with me. And they're like, fuck you, blah, blah. So you do all kind of elaborated introduction of who in sense of character, in sense of events. Like, oh yeah, the wolf heard the construction sounds and decided to visit the pigs and saw that they're building houses and decided to go get him some sausages. So yeah, exposition of the story is sort of prolongated introduction. And then come the meat of the story, the episode. So first episode is like, okay, pig comes to the straw house, the little piggy runs to hide inside the house, wolf threatens to blow down the house, pig says, fuck you, I have straw house, you cannot touch me, and then he huffs and puffs and displays his superpower, destroys the house, and piggy runs to his stupid brother. So yeah, episodes have this sort of rising and falling little structure inside them. So we first see the scene that wolf came, then pigs reacted, the consequences of the events are going on. So make sure that you know what is within your episode the sequence of events, and try to connect them in some sort of cause and effect way. So wolf comes, pig runs away because the wolf is there. Wolf threatens to blow the house because he cannot the pig. Pig says fuck you because they feel safe, and so on and so on. And so, you know, the episodes repeat, like the wolf tries to eat the first pig, second pig, and the third pig, and then we have some sort of, you know, everything is set for the final stage, for the final battle. So the brothers are inside the house, and the house proved to be, you know, resistant to the wolf's huffing. And then the drama, you know, ramps up. Like wolf brings a machine gun or whatever and tries to take over the house. They defend, you know. Then he decides to climb into the chimney, but the pigs have a flamethrower and burn the wolf or whatever. So the climaxing is important because it converges all the episodes to one point from where the story will change. So what's the basic element of any story? Is the change. So the situation we set up in the beginning somehow dramatically changes, and then in the end it will be a new status quo, new situation that some other story will pick up from. So basically you have to see what in your storyline changes and what induces the changes. And also, because you will have branching stories, you have to see for each of these branches what are the causes and the effects of the change and how this change develops further. And last but not least is the ending. And endings are very important because you have to explain what happens after and not only in sense of short description, but also it's setting, it's giving the answers, it's setting the new situation, like, okay, pigs lived happily ever after, and I don't know, they enjoyed the new house and the wolf skin they took from the wolf. So you have to sort of the point of the story has to be nailed down in the end. The player, unless you want it to, cannot have like, well, what happened, what's going on, did I miss something? So player needs to have this sort of closure, and all the information and emotions you wanted them to feel, they have to be really, really, really experienced in the ending. So I draw you a structure of these sequences, and told you in detail what's important about each one. Because in introduction, typical mistakes are placing a player with important choices. Like the story starts and then riders rush up to you and say, are you for the blue or are you for the black? How do I know? It's random. Players don't like random. It makes them save game and cheat. So we'll cover that later when we deal with choices, but don't place any dramatical and significant choices in the introduction. Also, have in mind that players is not fully immersed in your story. They don't know where they arrived. You have to introduce them slowly. Their attention span is weak, which is good for you because you can drive them slowly into the heart of matters, but also you can plant important clues here. Like Darth Vader displays his superpower immediately. We don't have to, wait for the moment when he chokes one of the generals, because we know he already did that. So wherever you want to plant, and which will pay off later, plant it here, but don't make it crucial for understanding of the story. So the fact that Darth Vader can choke with force is not crucial for understanding the story. The most crucial is like, who's Luke, why does he go on this journey, and so on and so forth. So also it's important to know what are the elements of your story, what are the key elements, and then introduce them. Like, are there characters that absolutely must be introduced? Are they a part of the story that already happened and player must know about it? Are there some elements about the world that player needs to know, and so on and so forth? So exposition will elaborate on these elements, but do introduce them early. Exposition is extension of introduction, and usually in interactive fiction games it's a common route. In the character-based story structure, the exposition basically where you ask player all kind of questions that will build the character, and that's why you need to sort of turn this exposition into really, really detailed and long route with several situations along the way. In plot-based games, basically exposition sets the scene, sets the elements so that player can make informed choices. Like, I don't know, do you storm the bunker with the rifle squad or you wait for the artillery attack? It's not only about knowing which one is better, but it's also about being introduced to all the elements. Like, we don't have strong enough planes to destroy the bunker, or I don't know, we have rifle squad but everyone has a grenade. So this kind of info that's necessary for making decisions will be set in the exposition. Branching can also happen in the exposition, in introduction, or some sort of questions, but they have to be light. Usually in exposition part, the choices are only serving to to illuminate the story from different sides. For example, we can have in a Three Piglet story, we can have a branching in exposition which will lead us to learn some things. For example, we can learn that I don't know, pig has bulletproof windows, and so later when the wolf comes with the machine gun, we will know why he failed to win this way. Or I don't know, we can learn another piece of information, for example, that pig has a flamethrower in their basement. So it's not the key elements, it's not relevant to following the story, but it's some things, some info that we can gain through branching. So it's either this or that. The episodes meat of the story, they propel the story forward. Basically, there are some sort of events that have their own, beginning, peak, and ending, and they introduce this gradual change. For example, the situation at the beginning of the Three Piglet story is that there are three pigs and one wolf. In the first episode, when the wolf brings down a straw house, there is still three piglets and one wolf. So the drama of the story didn't happen yet, so the crucial change didn't happen yet, but something did happen. Pig had house, and the end of the episode doesn't have house. So these small changes propel story forward towards the critical dramatic event. So that's why it's important for you to set goals for every episode. So every sequence, including this storyline episodes, need to have clear goal. Like, what do you expect player to learn? What do you expect player to experience? How you expect player to influence the story? So you have to return to the theme and plot aim, and you have your story structure, and you have to carefully position your episodes along this story structure and know exactly what each episode contributes, what it builds. And if you have complex story structure, then you have to see which episodes rely on knowledge from previous episodes and which episodes cannot be combined. For example, episodes in storyline A of Raul's work and episodes of the storyline B in his work cannot depend on each other. So storyline A episodes will be self-contained. They will sort of contain only the elements that we learned during the storyline A. Episodes build tension, they move story forward, but they also can digress. So episodes can be used to digress, to have some sort of extended information needed for the story. Let's say you have a complex character and he needs to, or she needs to express some delicate personality trait, something quirky, something you couldn't tell from the introduction exposition. That's where you write an episode to show how they are. So the episodes can digress. Like in most TV shows, it's like one digression after the other, and there's some spanning story arc. So basically, if you need something explained about the villain, about his origins, about the character, about their origins, about why something like this, about some events that happened before, like flashbacks or flash forwards. So basically, you can digress. You can have this sort of parallel episodes, but you need to know which episodes propel the story forward, which episodes are digressing. And digressing is okay, just if you know why you put it, and that's why thinking about goals for each episode counts. A peak of drama or the climax can happen in one sequence, in one episode, or through several. I think you can also have one climax or three climaxes, which is, I think, optimal. So you can have gradual ramping up of dramatic situations, and this is usually in pulp stories. Like the players meet some bad guy, then defeat them, and then they realize there is a bigger bad guy behind, and then they go to defeat the bigger bad guy, and then they get caught, and that's more drama because not only they are facing the evil genius, they are in his clutches, and blah blah blah. So connect the dots and make sure that player doesn't have any where did this come from moments. So make sure that all your story leads to this point, this climatic point, because this climatic point will change the world. It will change the events. Before Three Pigs, Wolf. After the climactic events, no more wolf, just Three Pigs. So avoid Deus Ex Machina, like super special, never mentioned before force or character appearing. For example, if we had the Three Pigs and the wolf, and then they fight, and wolf cannot get in, and pigs cannot get out, and then suddenly Superman comes and beats the crap out of the wolf. That's bad story. That's Deus Ex. That's inviting a previously unmentioned and usually unexpected force to deal with the situation. Make sure that the climax that makes sense in the sense of build-up of the story, that there are no suddenly introduced elements, and that's why you need to think about also these goals, like what's going to what's going to be a goal of each episode, of each element. And in the endings are very important, because just because the peak is past the reader doesn't mean that the rest of the story has to be, calm or uninteresting. The endings are a very good place to build your sequels, but also, most importantly, the endings are place for emotions. So whatever emotions you want player to feel, the ending has to nail it. Like, if you want a good ending, player needs to feel accomplished or happy or proud of themselves. And if you have bad ending, player needs to have a sense of closure, fulfilling closure. Like, they have to say, yeah, I failed and I understand why, and I'll do better next time, or I'll change. Don't leave players with like sudden endings that don't explain what happened. Don't have them feel like, what the fuck happened, or why did I fail. And then also, of course, unless you want them to feel bitterness, do avoid these kind of bitter endings. So yeah, bad ending can be sad, ending can be tear-jerking, and ending can be all kinds of bad feelings, but don't let them, feel angry at you as a writer, like, what? Upset them, yeah, or move them, rouse them, whatever, make them cry, but don't have them pull back, like, well, I don't want to feel this emotion, where did this come from? So your homework is to dissect your story, looking at your storyline, and divide it into this sequence. What's your introduction, what's your exposition, what are your episodes, what's the climax, and what's the storylines leading towards the endings. Define goal for each of these parts. Outline the plot for each of these sequences. Write a few lines, no more. Like, okay, this is introduction, I have to introduce this element, goal is this, and the plot goes like this. For example, I don't know, okay, my story is about ice world, so I need to introduce the danger of the ice, the way people cope with this danger, and few of the main characters. That's it. I'll elaborate more later in the exposition. In the exposition, I will elaborate, these characters are like this, these characters are like that, and there's this, I don't know, nomads who ride animals through the ice desert world, and there's some crazy people who turn into snow trolls and blah blah blah, whatever. But I have to know what each segment will deal with. And when outlining this plot structure for each of the sequences, write down what happens or what can happen if you have branching, and make sure that this branching doesn't change the story before it's called for. And also try to define some sort of emotions and values which should be displayed, experienced, or tested in each episode. For example, in the beginning of the story, I want player to feel like this. And then in the exposition, I want player to learn that. And then in the episode, I want each episode to bring player to that state or this state. So yeah, this is really complex and complicated, but it shouldn't be difficult for you, because we are going really like a meat grinder, slowly churning and crushing bones and everything. So it's not so difficult if you done previous homeworks properly, especially this story outline. Return to your plot outlines, refine them if needed, and if you have any changes, do return and change all the data, so you don't leave mess in your homework sheet, because basically what you've built so far and with this is your blueprint for your story. Writing is going to be so easy when you know all these data. So yeah, while setting out these episodes and thinking about goals, basically you will be developing your plot, because you have to know exactly what happens, where, when, and why. Good luck. See you on Friday, and I'll remind you on Tuesday that your homework is due Friday. Ciao.